My mother held the gift boxes high so everyone could see them. Gold wrapping paper. Red ribbons, each tagged carefully with a grandchild's name. The dining room smelled like roasted turkey, cinnamon candles, and something else I couldn't name at the time, something heavy, almost metallic, like tension pretending to be warmth. "All right," Mom said brightly, clapping once. "Time for Nana and Grandpa's special Thanksgiving tradition." Children cheered. Chairs scraped. Phones came out to record. My daughter Lily squeezed my hand under the table. "Mom, are those for us too?" she whispered. I smiled softly. "I think so." I truly believed that. My parents began handing out gifts one by one. "Ethan, because you got straight A's." Applause. "Madison for making the cheer team." More applause. My sister Claire leaned back proudly, watching her children unwrap expensive electronics. Then came my brother's kids, gaming consoles, designer headphones, envelopes filled with cash. Laughter grew louder, paper tore, everyone celebrated. And then the gifts stopped. My parents stepped back, smiling, satisfied. The room stayed loud for another few seconds before something subtle changed. My children were still sitting. Empty-handed, Lily looked down at the table. My son Noah glanced around, confused. "Grandma," he asked quietly, "did we miss ours?" My mother didn't answer immediately. She exchanged a quick look with my sister. Then she said lightly, casually, like it meant nothing, "Oh, sweetheart, these were for the grandkids who made us proud this year." The room froze. Someone laughed awkwardly. My nephew snorted. "Guess you guys didn't qualify." Claire didn't correct him. She smiled. My father sipped wine, said nothing. And in that moment I felt something inside me shift. Not anger, not shock, recognition. I stood up slowly, picked up my children's coats. "Kids," I said calmly, "we're leaving." Mom blinked. "Oh, don't be dramatic," I looked at her once, just once. And for the first time in my life, I didn't try to keep peace. We walked out while wrapping paper still covered the floor behind us. I didn't know yet that Thanksgiving dinner would start a chain reaction involving stolen bakery recipes, family gossip campaigns, lawyers, trademarks, and a truth my parents never expected to be told publicly. But I knew one thing as I buckled my kids into the car. Something irreversible had just happened. To curiosity LOOPS, something was off driving away. Lily asked softly, "Did we do something wrong?" That question stayed in the air longer than anything my parents had said, because this wasn't new behavior. It was escalation. Why single my children out publicly? Why attach pride to gifts? Why did Claire look prepared, almost expectant, when the moment happened? And why did my father avoid eye contact completely? Internal thought, this wasn't spontaneous. It felt rehearsed, like a message. But I didn't yet understand what message they were trying to send, or what they thought I would do in response. Before I keep going, I want to ask you something. Tell me, where are you listening from right now? Are you at home after a long day, driving somewhere quiet? Maybe folding laundry while thinking about family dynamics you rarely talk about. If stories about real emotional experiences resonate with you, stay with me. Like and subscribe the channel. Trust me, it's free and helps reach more people who can relate to these stories. All right, now keep listening, because story unfolds slowly, because real betrayal rarely announces itself loudly at first. Sometimes it looks like Thanksgiving dinner. My name is Emily Carter. I was 32 that Thanksgiving. A single mom to 2 kids, Lily, 10, thoughtful and observant like she understood more than adults realized, and Noah, 8, endlessly optimistic. I owned a small neighborhood bakery called Sweet Haven. Nothing flashy. Just fresh bread, cinnamon rolls, birthday cakes, and regular customers who knew my kids by name. The bakery wasn't inherited. I built it from scratch after my divorce. Long mornings, late nights, flour permanently under my nails, but it worked. We were stable, happy, peaceful. My relationship with my parents had always existed in careful balance. They loved appearances, community status, achievement measured visibly. My older sister Claire represented success perfectly, married, affluent, socially admired. Her children played travel sports and attended private schools. My life looked different. Divorced, working-class business owner, 2 kids raised mostly by me. My parents never criticized directly. They just compared quietly. Comments like, "Claire manages everything so effortlessly. Her children are very accomplished. You've chosen a harder path." I accepted it, because family harmony mattered. Every Thanksgiving, I brought pies from the bakery. Every holiday, I showed up early to help cook. I believed consistency eventually earned respect. That belief ended at the gift table. The group chat exploded the next morning. Claire posted photos. "Perfect family Thanksgiving, read so grateful for proud grandkids." Dozens of relatives commented. Praise, hearts, compliments. No mention of my children. I stared at the photos. My kids cropped out entirely. Internal thought. They're rewriting the story already. Then came the texts. "Mom, Emily, you embarrassed us by leaving." "Dad, you overreacted." "Claire, you made my kids uncomfortable." I read them silently. No apology, no acknowledgement. Only accusation. I finally answered when Mom called. "You owe everyone an apology," she said immediately. "For what?" I asked calmly. "For storming out. You excluded my children. They need motivation." I blinked slowly. "They're 8 and 10, Mom sighed. "You've always been sensitive about competition." Internal thought, competition. Between grandchildren, I asked quietly, "So withholding gifts was intentional?" "Yes," she said. "We wanted to encourage higher standards." Something inside me settled. This wasn't favoritism by accident. It was policy. Within days, strange things started happening. Customers mentioned hearing I was struggling financially. One asked gently, "Are you closing the bakery?" I frowned. "No," another said. "Your sister mentioned you might be overwhelmed." My stomach tightened. Claire. Then a supplier requested early payment, citing rumors about instability. Someone is undermining me. The timing wasn't coincidence. Thanksgiving humiliation had turned into reputation damage. Dialogue confronting Claire, I called her directly. "Are you telling people my business is failing?" She laughed lightly. "Oh, Emily, don't be paranoid. Suppliers are calling me. I just said you seemed stressed. You told people I'm struggling." "I'm concerned for you," she replied sweetly. Concern disguised as sabotage. I realized then, Thanksgiving wasn't punishment. It was positioning. 3 days later, my bakery assistant Jenna approached me hesitantly. "Emily, someone came in asking very specific questions about your recipes." I looked up. "What kind of questions?" "Ingredient ratios, baking times, your cinnamon roll glaze." Cold realization spread through me. "Who?" She hesitated. "Your sister." The room went quiet except for ovens humming. Internal thought, why would Claire need my recipes? Then Jenna added softly, "She said your mom helped develop them years ago." I froze. Because my mother had never worked in my bakery. But suddenly, pieces aligned. Family gossip, reputation damage, recipe questions, the humiliation at Thanksgiving. They weren't just excluding me. They were preparing to replace me. I locked the bakery doors early that evening, sat alone among cooling bread racks. And for the first time since walking out of Thanksgiving dinner, I stopped trying to understand their feelings and started analyzing their strategy. Something bigger was happening, something planned, and I had a growing suspicion that the gift my children didn't receive was actually the moment my family revealed exactly who they were. The sign went up on a Tuesday morning. I saw it while driving my kids to school. A storefront 3 blocks from my bakery, recently vacant, now had balloons tied to the door and a banner stretched across the windows. "Coming soon, CLAIRE Sweet Table." I slowed the car without realizing it. Lily leaned forward from the back seat. "Mom, isn't that like your bakery?" I didn't answer right away, because the logo looked familiar. Soft pastel colors, handwritten script font. Even the wheat illustration resembled the one I'd designed years earlier at my kitchen table. Internal thought, no, that can't be coincidence. Noah asked innocently, "Is Aunt Claire opening a bakery too?" I forced a small smile. "Looks like it," but my hands tightened on the steering wheel, because suddenly Thanksgiving felt less emotional and more strategic. That afternoon, my mother sent a group message. Family announcement. Claire is launching her dream bakery next month. So proud of her courage to start something new. Attached was a digital invitation. Grand opening celebration. Ribbon cutting. Local press attending. I stared at the message for a long time. Not one mention of my bakery existing 3 blocks away. Then Claire texted me privately. "Claire, I hope you're supportive. There's room for everyone." Internal thought, supportive? I called her immediately. "Are you opening a bakery modeled after mine?" I asked. She laughed lightly. "You don't own baking, Emily. The branding looks identical. Rustic aesthetics are popular. You came into my shop asking about recipes." "Oh my God," she sighed. "You're being territorial." My voice stayed steady. "Did Mom give you my formulas?" Silence. Then, "Mom said she helped you learn years ago." My stomach dropped. That wasn't true. Every recipe in Sweet Haven came from years of trial and error after my divorce. Failed batches, burned dough, sleepless nights. Claire continued smoothly. "You should be happy for me." Internal thought, she genuinely believes this narrative. The call ended without resolution, but something changed inside me. Confusion shifted into suspicion. That evening, I sat in the bakery after closing. The smell of sugar and butter usually comforted me. That night, it felt fragile. I replayed Thanksgiving in my mind. The gifts, the public exclusion, my children being singled out. A realization surfaced slowly. They hadn't humiliated us randomly. They had separated us from the family narrative first, made us outsiders. So when Claire launched her bakery, no one would question loyalty. It was positioning. And I had walked right into it. The next week, regular customers mentioned Claire's new shop. "Oh, your sister's place looks adorable. We'll have to try both. Family competition must be fun." Fun. I smiled politely each time. But then orders began canceling. A wedding cake postponed. Corporate catering moved elsewhere. One customer said apologetically, "Your mom recommended Claire's bakery for large events." That sentence landed heavier than Thanksgiving itself. My parents weren't neutral. They were actively redirecting business. I drove to my parents' house unannounced. Dad opened the door, surprised. "Emily, everything okay? Why are you promoting Claire's bakery over mine?" He sighed immediately. "You're making this bigger than it is. You told clients to switch. We're supporting your sister's new venture." "At my expense," he crossed his arms. "Claire has more growth potential." Internal thought, growth potential, not fairness. "I built my business alone," I said quietly. "And we're proud," he replied. "But Claire needs momentum." Momentum fueled by my reputation. 2 days later, Jenna ran into the kitchen holding her phone. "Emily, you need to see this." Claire's Bakery had posted its first menu online. I opened the page. My cinnamon roll name. My signature caramel apple loaf. Even the seasonal pumpkin brioche wording matched mine almost exactly. My chest didn't tighten. It went cold. Because recipes themselves weren't copyrighted, but trade secrets mattered. And someone had access. I scrolled further. At the bottom of the post, family recipes passed down through generations. Family recipes. Internal thought, they rewrote ownership. Relatives began calling. Aunt Susan said gently, "You should collaborate instead of competing." A cousin messaged, "Heard Claire saved your struggling concept." Saved. The narrative was spreading fast. Claire equals visionary entrepreneur. Emily equals overwhelmed single mom losing control. The story wasn't accidental. It was coordinated. I called Mom again. "You told people Claire rescued my business idea." She sounded annoyed. "You're too emotional about this. You're erasing years of work. We're protecting family legacy." "By replacing me," she lowered her voice. "You walked out on Thanksgiving. Actions have consequences." The sentence landed like a verdict. Thanksgiving had been punishment, not motivation. Punishment for independence. That night, Lily asked quietly, "Grandma doesn't like us anymore, does she?" I knelt beside her. "It's not about you. But we didn't get presents because we weren't good enough." Her words hit deeper than anything adults said. Internal thought. They hurt my children to gain control. Something settled inside me then. Not rage, decision. I stopped trying to repair relationships and started watching. A week later, Jenna uncovered something unexpected. While organizing old files, she found scanned paperwork from years earlier. Vendor registration forms, original branding submissions, trademark draft emails I'd forgotten about. I opened one attachment. There it was. a partially completed trademark application for Sweet Haven, never finalized because I couldn't afford legal fees at the time. My hands trembled slightly. Claire's new bakery logo violated multiple branding similarities. Suddenly everything clicked. Thanksgiving humiliation, public narrative shift, recipe access, business launch timing. They believed I lacked protection. They assumed I wouldn't fight. And that realization changed the emotional landscape entirely. This wasn't sibling rivalry, it was calculated displacement. I didn't confront anyone again. That surprised them. I stopped responding to gossip, stopped defending myself publicly. Instead, I scheduled a consultation with an intellectual property attorney. His office smelled like coffee and leather-bound files. He reviewed everything quietly. Menus, screenshots, timeline, family messages. Finally, he leaned back. "Emily," he said carefully, "this isn't just similarity." My heart beat slowly. "What is it?" "It's potential trade dress infringement and misrepresentation." Legal language, calm, powerful. "What are my options?" I asked. He smiled slightly. "You have more leverage than they think." Internal thought. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt steady. "We don't attack immediately," the attorney said. "Why not?" "Because they're still building their narrative. And we let them invest fully, publicly, financially." I understood instantly. Documentation, timing, exposure, just like proof rising in dough slowly, invisibly. I nodded. "Then we wait." That evening, as I locked up Sweet Haven, my phone buzzed. Claire posted another announcement. Local news coverage confirmed for her grand opening. My parents proudly tagged themselves as founding supporters. The entire town would be there. Public validation, public narrative, public victory. They believed Thanksgiving proved my place in the family hierarchy. They had no idea it had also given me something else. Distance, clarity, and time to prepare the one thing they never expected from me. A gift returned. Publicly, irrefutably. The strangest part wasn't losing customers. It was how peaceful I felt once I stopped explaining myself. People expect reactions. They expect arguments, emotional posts, desperate clarifications. Instead, I baked. Opened the shop at 5 a.m., served coffee. Smiled, said nothing. And silence confused everyone. Because my family had already decided who I was in their story. The overwhelmed single mom who couldn't keep up. When I didn't fight back publicly, they relaxed. They thought I had accepted defeat. That assumption became my greatest advantage. Claire's bakery countdown flooded social media. Daily posts. Professional photography, influencers invited, local news teasers. My mother commented under every post. "So proud of my daughter carrying on our family baking tradition." Each time I read that sentence, I felt a small shift inside me. Not hurt anymore. Documentation. Jenna noticed first. "You're not upset?" she asked while frosting cupcakes. I shook my head. "I'm paying attention," she frowned. "To what?" "To how confident they are." Internal thought, people only get careless when they believe they've already won. Mom showed up at the bakery unannounced. She walked slowly around the shop like an inspector, touching tables, examining displays, evaluating. "You look tired," she said finally. "I'm working." She sighed dramatically. "You don't have to keep struggling like this." I wiped flour from my hands. "I'm not struggling." She leaned closer. "Claire offered you a position." I blinked once. "A position? She's willing to let you manage production." The words landed carefully. Calculated humiliation disguised as generosity. "You want me to work for Claire?" I asked calmly. "She's expanding quickly. You could have stability." "This is my bakery." Mom lowered her voice. "You walked away from family support. You excluded my children." She waved her hand dismissively. "That was motivation." Internal thought, she still believes that. "You're being emotional again," she continued. "Claire has investors. Media coverage, she's building something bigger. And you want me beneath her. I want you secure." I met her eyes. "No, you want hierarchy restored." Her smile faded. "Pride will ruin you, Emily." I didn't argue. I simply said, "We'll see." She left convinced I was stubborn, not dangerous. After she left, I stood in the quiet bakery listening to ovens hum. For years, I had interpreted their behavior as preference. Claire the favorite, me the independent one. But now I saw something deeper. They weren't rewarding success. They were rewarding control. Claire depended on them, I didn't, and independence had always threatened the family structure. Thanksgiving wasn't rejection. It was correction. They tried to push me back into place. They just underestimated how far I had already moved beyond needing approval. My attorney, Daniel, scheduled a second meeting. He spread documents across his conference table. Trademark filings, brand comparison charts, timeline analysis. Claire filed her business registration 6 weeks before Thanksgiving, he said. I froze. 6 weeks? Yes, internal thought. The humiliation was planned after the business decision. Daniel continued. She secured branding vendors using photos pulled directly from your online presence. I leaned forward. That's provable, he nodded. And more importantly, she's publicly claiming generational ownership of recipes. What does that mean legally? It opens the door for fraud claims if proven false. The room felt very quiet. What happens if we act now? I asked. He smiled slightly. We don't. I understood immediately, timing again. We wait until the grand opening, Daniel said. Why? Maximum visibility, maximum witnesses. I exhaled slowly. You want public correction. I want undeniable reality. Internal thought, just like Thanksgiving. Only this time I would control the narrative. That evening, Lily sat beside me doing homework. Mom, she said carefully, are you sad about Aunt Claire's bakery? I considered my answer. No, she looked surprised. Why not? Because sometimes people show you who they are, and that helps you make better decisions. Noah added from the couch. Are we still not good enough for Grandma? The question hit deeper than any legal conversation. I knelt beside them. You were always enough. Internal thought, and I would never again allow anyone to make them question that. That moment became the true reason for everything that followed. Not revenge, protection. Something unexpected began happening. Longtime customers noticed the similarities between the two bakeries. Mrs. Hernandez whispered one morning, Claire's menu looks exactly like yours. Another customer said, I went to her preview tasting, everything tasted familiar. Whispers spread quietly, not accusations. Curiosity, narratives were beginning to fracture. And I didn't have to say a word. 3 days before her grand opening, Claire arrived at Sweet Haven. Perfect hair, designer coat, confidence radiating. She didn't sit. She stood like she owned the space. We need to talk, she said. I nodded toward a table. She remained standing. I know you've been meeting lawyers. I didn't deny it. You're trying to sabotage me. I folded a napkin calmly. I'm protecting my business. She laughed sharply. You're jealous? Of what? Growth, attention, success. Internal thought, she truly believes success equals visibility. You built your life around struggle, she continued. I chose scale. You chose my work. Her smile tightened. Mom said those recipes belong to the family. They don't, she leaned forward. You walked away from family. You don't get to claim legacy. The sentence clarified everything. Thanksgiving wasn't punishment for failure. It was punishment for independence. You humiliated my children, I said quietly. You humiliated yourself by leaving. You laughed. I didn't correct them, she replied coolly. Silence filled the bakery. Then she added softly, you could still join me. Internal thought, last chance to submit. I shook my head. No, her expression hardened. Then don't come crying when Sweet Haven closes. She walked out confidently, certain she had already won. After she left, I realized something important. Claire wasn't afraid. My parents weren't nervous. They believed their version of reality completely, which meant exposure wouldn't feel like revenge to them. It would feel like betrayal. And that realization removed the last trace of hesitation inside me, because they had already chosen betrayal first. Daniel finalized filings, trademark registration expedited, evidence packages prepared, cease and desist letters drafted but unopened, media contact timelines reviewed, every step calm, legal, precise. I didn't tell friends, didn't warn family. I attended Thanksgiving follow-up dinners politely, smiled through conversations, listened as relatives praised Claire's original concept. Each compliment became another future witness. The night before Claire's grand opening, I closed Sweet Haven early, turned off lights, stood alone in the quiet shop. Flower dust floated through warm air. I remembered crying here years earlier after my divorce, building this place from nothing. No help, no investment, no approval, only persistence. Internal thought, they thought Thanksgiving took something from me. But it gave me clarity, and clarity creates power. My phone buzzed, Daniel's message. "Everything is ready." I locked the door. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I smiled. Because tomorrow, the entire town would gather to celebrate Claire. And they would unknowingly witness something else. The moment the story changed, Claire's grand opening looked like a movie set, balloon arch, local news van parked outside. A ribbon stretched across the entrance while photographers adjusted lenses. The entire street buzzed with excitement. I arrived 10 minutes early with Lily and Noah, not to interrupt, not to confront, just to watch. My children held my hands quietly. Lily whispered, "Are we supposed to be here?" "Yes," I said calmly. "We're guests." Internal thought, witnesses. Across the street, my parents stood beside Claire greeting people proudly. Mom wore her important event smile. Dad shook hands like he had built the business himself. Claire spotted me immediately. Her eyebrows lifted in surprise, then satisfaction. She walked over confidently. "I didn't think you'd come," she said lightly. "I was invited publicly," I replied. She glanced at my kids. "Well, I hope there's no hard feelings." Internal thought, she believes history has already been rewritten. "Congratulations," I said calmly. Her smile widened. "See, I knew you'd come around." Behind her, reporters adjusted microphones. Community leaders gathered. Claire leaned closer. "You'll understand someday that this was inevitable," I asked quietly. "What was inevitable?" She said it without hesitation. "That I'd take this further than you ever could." The sentence carried no cruelty, only certainty. And that certainty told me she still didn't know. Mom approached next. "Oh, Emily, I'm so glad you're supporting your sister," she said loudly enough for others to hear. Support. The word performed for the crowd. Dad added, "This is what family looks like." Internal thought, public narrative reinforcement. A neighbor turned toward me. "You must be proud, 2 bakeries in the family." Mom answered before I could. "Claire carries our real family recipes." There it was again. The claim repeated confidently, documented publicly. Exactly what Daniel had been waiting for. I smiled politely. "Yes," I said. "That's been said." Mom squeezed my arm tightly, a warning disguised as affection. "Let's keep today positive." I nodded. "We will." The mayor gave a short speech. Applause rose. Claire held oversized scissors. Cameras flashed. She cut the ribbon. Cheers erupted. People flooded inside. Music played. Servers passed sample pastries. And as guests tasted cinnamon rolls identical to mine, compliments echoed everywhere. "This is incredible. So original. Best bakery in town already." Claire glowed under praise. My parents watched proudly. Internal thought, they're fully invested now, which meant the correction would carry maximum impact. A reporter approached me unexpectedly. "You're Emily, right? Claire mentioned you also own a bakery." Mom stepped forward quickly. "Yes, but Claire's concept expands on family tradition." The reporter turned back to me. "How does it feel seeing the family business grow?" I answered carefully. "It's interesting seeing stories evolve." Claire laughed lightly. "Emily's always been humble." Internal thought, they keep speaking for me. The reporter asked another question. "Are these recipes truly generational?" Claire nodded confidently. "Yes, passed down through our mother." Mom smiled proudly. Guests nodded approvingly. And with that statement, every necessary claim had now been made publicly. Across the room, I saw Daniel enter quietly. No announcement, just a man carrying a slim folder. He caught my eye once. A small nod. The moment had arrived. I exhaled slowly. My heartbeat remained steady, not revenge, completion. Daniel approached Claire politely. "Miss Carter," she smiled professionally. "Yes, I represent Sweet Haven Bakery." Her smile didn't fade yet. "Oh, wonderful, maybe we can collaborate." He handed her an envelope. "And Emily Carter." Confusion flickered. She opened it casually. Read one line. Her expression changed. Mom leaned closer. "What is that?" Claire's voice lowered. "Legal notice." Dad frowned. "What kind of notice?" Daniel spoke calmly. "Trademark registration confirmation, trade dress infringement documentation, and cease and desist order effective immediately." The surrounding guests fell silent. Music continued awkwardly in the background. Claire laughed nervously. "This is ridiculous." Daniel remained calm. "You are currently operating under branding, menu structure, and public claims that violate registered intellectual property." Mom stepped forward sharply. "You can't serve legal papers at a family event," Daniel replied evenly. "The claims were made publicly. Correction follows publicly." Internal thought, exactly. Claire's voice rose. "These recipes belong to our family," Daniel asked gently. "Can you provide documentation proving authorship?" Mom answered quickly. "I helped develop them." I spoke for the first time. "No, you didn't." Gasps spread among guests. Dad turned toward me. "Emily, stop this right now." I shook my head calmly. "I spent years developing those recipes alone." Claire snapped. "You're trying to destroy me out of jealousy," I replied quietly. "I asked you not to take them. You never own baking. I own my work." Silence settled heavily. The social narrative began shifting visibly. People looked between us differently now, not sisters competing, creator and imitator. Mom's voice trembled with anger. "We supported you for years. You excluded my children publicly," I said evenly. "That was discipline." "For children," Dad added loudly. "You're humiliating this family," I answered calmly. "No, I'm correcting the record." A customer nearby whispered, "She copied her." Another guest murmured, "I thought this was Emily's bakery concept." The room transformed. Recognition spreading person by person. Claire's final defense. Claire's confidence cracked. "You left the family first," she said. "You walked out." "Yes," I said softly, "when my children were told they weren't worthy." Her face tightened. "That had nothing to do with business. It showed me exactly where I stood." Internal thought, and exactly what I needed to protect. Guests began remembering Thanksgiving differently. I saw realization appear in faces. Neighbors exchanged looks. Someone said quietly, "That explains why Emily left early," another added. "I thought something felt off." Narratives rewrite themselves quickly once truth appears. Mom noticed the shift too. Her voice softened suddenly. "We can resolve this privately." I shook my head. "You made it public first." Daniel continued calmly. "The notice allows immediate rebranding compliance or legal action for damages and misrepresentation." Claire whispered, "This will ruin me." I answered gently, "No, your choices did." My parents stood stunned. For the first time, they had no authority left to control the story, no emotional leverage, no audience believing their version unquestioningly, only reality and witnesses. The bakery had gone quiet, not silent but heavy. Forks paused midair, phones lowered. People sensed something irreversible unfolding. Claire still held the legal notice in her hand, knuckles white. Then she laughed, not nervous, defensive. "Sharp, this is insane," she said loudly. "You actually brought a lawyer to sabotage your own sister." Several guests nodded reflexively. Mom stepped beside her immediately. "Yes," she added, voice rising, "Emily has always been dramatic." Internal thought, there it is, the rewrite. Dad crossed his arms. "You couldn't stand seeing Claire succeed." The accusation landed publicly. And suddenly I wasn't a business owner protecting her work. I was the jealous daughter again, the familiar role, the scapegoat. Claire turned to the crowd. "She's been bitter since Thanksgiving." Mom nodded eagerly. "She embarrassed us by walking out," Dad added. "She's always taken things too personally." A woman near the pastry table asked carefully, "What happened at Thanksgiving?" Mom answered quickly before I could speak. "Emily overreacted because we encouraged accountability." Internal thought, they still believe humiliation equals parenting. Claire pointed at me. "You couldn't handle that your life choices didn't turn out like mine." I felt Lily's hand tighten around mine. Noah moved closer to my side, and something inside me settled completely. No anger, just clarity. I spoke quietly. "You're saying I'm jealous." Claire nodded confidently. Yes, you're saying I'm trying to hurt you. Yes, you're saying you did nothing wrong. Mom answered firmly. Absolutely nothing. Good, they had said it clearly, publicly, exactly what truth requires. I turned slightly so everyone could hear. At Thanksgiving, I said calmly, my parents handed gifts to every grandchild who made them proud. Murmurs spread instantly. Mom interrupted. That was symbolic, I continued. My children received nothing, Claire scoffed. That's irrelevant. I shook my head gently. It isn't. A guest asked quietly. They really didn't get gifts, Mom's voice sharpened. We were teaching values. For 8-year-olds, someone whispered. Dad raised his voice. You're twisting the situation. I met his gaze. No, I'm describing it. Internal thought, truth sounds cruel when spoken plainly. Mom pointed at me. You poisoned your children against us. I protected them. You turned them into victims. They were humiliated. Claire crossed her arms. You always play the martyr. A neighbor spoke up carefully. I remember Emily leaving early. The kids looked upset. Mom snapped. Families have discipline. The room shifted again. People weren't seeing family conflict anymore. They were seeing pattern. Claire stepped forward aggressively. You're destroying my business because you can't accept that I'm better at this than you. The sentence hung in the air. Clear, honest, unfiltered. I nodded slowly. So you believe success justifies taking my work? I didn't take anything, she said loudly. Mom added, we shared family knowledge. Dad said, you owe this family everything. Internal thought. They still cannot separate love from ownership. Daniel handed me another folder. I opened it calmly. Inside were printed timelines, recipe development dates, website archives, original blog posts, photographs of my early test batches years before Claire baked professionally. I passed copies to nearby guests. No announcement, no dramatic gesture, just facts moving from hand to hand. A woman read quietly. These are years old. Another said, these match Sweet Haven exactly. Claire's voice cracked. That proves nothing, Daniel responded calmly. It proves authorship. Mom shook her head violently. Paperwork doesn't define family, I answered softly, but it defines ownership. People stepped back from Claire's display tables, not dramatically, just subtly, distance forming, questions replacing admiration. A reporter approached again. Claire, did you claim original recipes publicly? She hesitated. Mom answered for her. Yes, because they are family recipes. The reporter turned toward me. Did you give permission for use? No, cameras recorded everything. Claire realized it then. This wasn't a private disagreement anymore. This was documentation. Mom's voice broke emotionally. You see, she said to the crowd. Emily always needed attention, Dad nodded. She's tearing her family apart. Claire added quietly, she wants us to fail. For a moment, some people looked uncertain again, because accusations still carry emotional weight. Internal thought. This is the last defense. Make me the problem. I inhaled slowly. Then I said the simplest thing. I didn't start this today. Silence. I asked privately for respect. No response. I asked privately for acknowledgement. Nothing. I asked privately for my children to be treated equally. Mom looked away. And when none of that mattered, I finished, I stopped asking. I looked at Lily and Noah. They gave me a gift at Thanksgiving, I said. Confused murmurs rose. Claire laughed bitterly. We didn't give you anything. I nodded. You gave me clarity. The room went still. You showed me exactly what my children would grow up believing about themselves if I stayed silent. Mom whispered. That's unfair. I shook my head gently. No, it was necessary. Internal thought. Painful truths often arrive disguised as rejection. Claire's shoulders dropped. The confidence drained. What happens now? She asked quietly. Daniel answered professionally. Rebranding and removal of protected materials within 30 days. Mom turned to me desperately. You would really do this to your sister? I answered honestly. I didn't do this. Dad's voice softened for the first time. We're still your family. I paused. That sentence once held power. Now it felt neutral. Family protects, I said calmly. It doesn't compete with children. No one argued. Because deep down they knew, guests left slowly, conversations hushed. Support shifted toward me quietly. Several customers approached. "We're coming by Sweet Haven tomorrow." "We didn't know." "I'm sorry about your kids." Claire sat at a table staring at untouched pastries. My parents stood beside her, smaller somehow. Not defeated, just exposed. I didn't linger. No victory lap, no final speech. I simply took my children's hands and walked out, just like Thanksgiving. Only this time I wasn't leaving empty. Sweet Haven expanded, not explosively, steadily, peacefully. Regular customers returned. New families filled weekend mornings. Lily helped decorate cookies after school. Noah ran the register pretending to be assistant manager. The bakery felt lighter, safe. Claire rebranded her shop under a different name. We rarely spoke. My parents sent occasional messages, careful ones, neutral. The dynamic had changed permanently. They no longer controlled access to belonging. People think revenge feels loud. It doesn't. It feels quiet, like finally exhaling after holding your breath for years. I didn't win a battle. I ended a pattern. My children learned something more valuable than approval. That dignity is not negotiable. That love should never require humiliation. And that walking away can sometimes be the most loving decision you make for yourself. Thanksgiving used to be my favorite holiday. Now it means something different, not family obligation, but chosen peace. And strangely, that became the greatest gift I ever received. I want to ask you something honestly. Was I wrong for exposing the truth publicly? Should family loyalty come before self-respect? Would you have stayed silent to keep peace, or walked away like I did? Tell me in the comments. I read every story you share. And if you've ever been the child, sibling, or parent who finally chose dignity over approval. Lastly, if you have not yet, please like and subscribe the channel. It's free and means a lot to us. It motivates us to bring you more stories. Thanks for watching. You're not alone.